and I'm with Utah Recycling Alliance. I'll be moderating this session. We'll give each person about 20 minutes and then time for question and answers, kind of similar to what we've been doing all day long today. The first person to speak today will be Julie. I knew the first name and not the last name. Julie Peck, is it Dabbling?
Peck Dabbling.
Okay, yes. And she has served as Salt Lake County's Urban Farming Program Manager since its inception in 2009. The purpose of the program is to maximize the value of county-owned land for residents by providing spaces for community gardens, commercial farming, employee gardens, and refugee farming. It also serves to facilitate the urban farming opportunities through the Urban Farming Assessment Act, which lowers property taxes for residents using land to grow food. In 1999, Julie moved from a condo in Park City to a 60s rambler in Holiday with fruit trees and grapevines. She did her first canning that year. Since then, that's great. She's added a garden growing several different varieties of tomatoes, peppers, cukes, and squash. She considers herself a perennial student of horticulture, learning from USU, her commercial farmers, Wasatch Community Gardens, and the refugee gardeners involved in the program. She also runs the county's open space program, preserving land in the state's most populous county for recreation, trails, and watershed. She has a bachelor's degree from Westminster College. And then we'll have Rosalind Brain. Rosalind Brain is an assistant professor, sustainable communities extension specialist in the Department of Environment and Society, College of Natural Resources at Utah State University. She uses conservation theory, communication techniques, and social marketing tools to foster environmental behaviors with a focus on waste reduction and local food movements. Rosalind developed and launched Extension Sustainability, a set of tools and information for the public to engage in sustainable behaviors. She also teaches communicating sustainability, has launched a statewide program to connect farmers with restaurants called Utah's Farm Chef Work, facilitates permaculture workshops for adults, and she designed and co-teaches sustainability camps for kids in Utah. And I have had the pleasure to work with Ross, so it's nice to be able to introduce her, and I will turn the time over to Julie.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk to you about our Salt Lake County program and really how we work to help support that local demand for food. And if any of you have worked with local government, you know that government is very hierarchical. And so the fact that our program is non-hierarchical, it is very much a collaborative effort among various agencies of government, across governments with other local governments, and then also with nonprofits is really kind of an anomaly in the world of government. So what I'm going to do is take a few minutes to talk to you about some of the components of our program, and then tell you about our newest component. And so these are 6 of the areas that we focus on, among others, but the ones I'll focus on today: commercial and small plot farming on county land, on public land, refugee farming, our farm to school program, ag policy, our Parks for Produce program, and our jail horticulture program. And then you get to hear about the new stuff we're kicking off, actually starting next week. So when I say ag policy, what do I mean? And to me it means working with local government officials, state government officials, our neighborhoods and residents, and it also means working with our in our case, our county employees, because we have a base of 4,000 employees, plus about 5,000 seasonal or part-time employees. And so we have a great opportunity to share the message and the importance of local food right there at the government center and at our other government buildings. So some of the things we've done is we participate with Salt Lake City, Slow Food Utah, Wasatch Community Gardens, and others in in an Eat Local Week. We're doing that in September this year. We have Food Day, which is part of a national effort, and we do that at the county government center, and we have had about 400 people come by in about 2 hours, 400 employees in a 2-hour window. It's amazing. The Urban Farming Assessment Act, which I'll talk about later, but that was actually passed into state law about 4 years ago. And then I spend time doing presentations like this. I'll go to the League of Cities and Towns, I'll go to nonprofits, I'll go to regional conferences. I've gone to the Growing Power Conference in Milwaukee, which is an international small and urban farm conference. But anywhere I can carry the message, I do. If any of you were in the presentation by Bob Groh earlier about our environment and air pollution, I used to go to Envision Utah every time, and every time there was a question period, I would raise my hand and ask about agriculture, local agriculture. And finally, it's part of their, it's part of the lexicon of what they talk about now in Envision Utah. Not just about clustered housing and work and sustainable systems to get to and from places and transportation, but they talk about agriculture. So you're attending things and asking questions can make a big difference. And then Salt Lake County received a Distinguished Service Award to Agriculture from our Salt Lake County Farm Bureau because, of course, I can't do any of this if I'm not working with farmers, too. So here is a picture from our from the farmers market that's put on by our New Roots Farm. This is our refugee farming program. It was started about 4 or 5 years ago with a federal grant and a county employee and a plot of county land that had lots of rocks and not a lot else. And it is an amazing garden off of Redwood Road in about 31st South now. It's about 3 acres. It's beautiful, and it's this way to connect the refugee population in Utah, which of course it's the largest in Salt Lake County of any area in the state, and connect them with what they had at home, which is a very agrarian society. So they get to grow their food. Sometimes it's the same stuff we eat, and sometimes it's not. And then they are selling it, and the great thing about this new market stand is they're selling this in what is considered a food desert in Salt Lake County. It's on about 39th South and 7th West. If you go in that area, you would not believe the number of apartments. I mean, it is lots and lots of apartments and no grocery store close by. So what these folks have is the ability to go to the convenience store for their food. And so by supplying a farm stand here, they're selling out. They're actually expanding this year. It's really exciting. This is a picture from one of our farm to school programs. Now the really neat thing about this is we've only been doing farm to school really legitimately for a year. I got a 3/4 time staff person to do farm to school, and she has been amazing, and she's here today. If you get a chance to meet Saprit Gill, you should talk with her because she's the woman in the pea costume. And Saprit she started our refugee farm. And then it was so successful that after that federal grant was gone, we segued it to the IRC, to the International Rescue Committee, and she had successfully produced a program that got her out of work, basically. And so we picked her up to start the Farm to School program. And we have some skeptics and some critics in the school districts and some people that aren't interested, but all it takes is one. So Jordan School District has been absolutely phenomenal to work with. And their school district nutrition director has made this commitment to trying to bring in more fruits and vegetables. And so we do these farm field days at Title I schools where we bring in physics and art and the senses. We do a table of smells, and they get to smell different herbs, and they get to talk with farmers, and we've got videos going of, like, you know, I'm sexy and I know it, you know. I'm not going to sing for you, but you know that song. So there are these farm videos. I don't know if you've ever seen these farm videos on, but they're like made by farmers, and they're doing like, I'm a farmer and I grow it. And they've got this rap down, and then they're running all over their farm, and they filmed it, and they're great. So we've got that playing in the background. We've got these great props around the school gymnasium from Wheeler Farm. And this was actually a physics thing that they were doing with the kids about which one's going to float and which one's going to sink. You know, it was the grape or the squash, and it was so fun. The kids really got into it. And then we have our Parks for Produce program, and that's our community garden program. basically. So these are 2 community gardens that are actually located in county parks. Now, how I think we've made this successful is, number one, we pay for the infrastructure. I figure we've been paying to water and fertilize the grass and mow the grass, and I've been able to convince our county mayor and council that they should pay to have the grass removed, a new water system installed, and ADA accessibility right inside the garden, so that anybody can come and garden in that community, in that neighborhood. And I'll tell you what I really like about this. This is actually this chain link fence. We had to extend it. That's at about 6 feet right there. But this is softball diamond. So we squeeze this in right in between. So it's kind of curvilinear on one side. You've got the outfield fence. And then on the other side, you've got subsidized housing. Just to the east of it, you've got a health clinic. And to the west of it, you have West Temple and brand new townhomes with nowhere to garden. And this garden has a waiting list a mile long. It's a great success. And the other thing that's really important I want to mention is we do this in conjunction with Wasatch Community Gardens, because they're in the Salt Lake Valley. They've been doing this for 25 years. And one thing government's very averse to is hiring more employees and more employees. That's just something that elected officials don't want to do. And so why should we create a brand new program when Wasatch knows how to do it? You know, they've made the mistakes. They've improved the way they do it. They know how to communicate. They know how to reconcile and mediate when you've got a couple of gardeners that are not getting along. So we pay them to manage our gardens for us, and then we work collaboratively with them. So we have about 4 of those across the valley. We hoped to have 5 by this time. That was always our goal, but the key factor for us, if you know about community gardens, is that's something that comes from the ground up. It comes from the neighborhood up. We do not say, here, I bequeath to you a community garden, grow and be fruitful and abundant. It doesn't work. If the neighbors aren't interested, we don't spend the money on it. So hopefully we can get a community garden going in a couple of other areas in Salt Lake County in the next couple of years. Commercial farming in an urban setting. Now, you've got a lot of people out there that say this won't work, and a lot of elected officials who think one thing. Agriculture and farming is a placeholder for future development, right? It has no future in an urban setting. It is there until we build the apartment building. It is there until we build Walmart. It is there until we build the strip mall. But what we have been repeatedly saying to them is local agriculture should be just as important as your parks, your playgrounds, your schools, your churches or synagogues, your diversified housing, and your business. And that we don't need large tracts of land. Small parcels set aside can work very well. And in this picture, that's Little Cottonwood Canyon that you're looking up at. Right here are townhomes. Over on the other side are single-family homes, and about a half a block in the foreground here to the west is 7th East. And would you even know that that's there? And some people would think you can't produce that much on there, but you can. You can produce a tremendous amount. We have farmers on a 4-acre, a 5-acre, and a 10-acre parcel of land in Salt Lake County, on county land, and they're growing well over 100,000 pounds of food every year that's distributed through CSAs, through the farmers market, and through roadside stands. The jail horticulture program is something, again, when I say non-hierarchical, I am not running that. That's Utah State University and the jail. Teaches great life skills to the inmates. Very long waiting list for the inmates that want to participate. They have to be, low risk, and they have to have a lot of good behavioral skills to be able to be allowed into the program. It's like an accelerated master gardener program. They also, along with selling food at the downtown farmers market, they are here in this picture giving pumpkins to the Hart Dixon School, which is a school for disabled and for adaptive folks. And I'm going to skip this and go here first. So, Urban Farming Assessment Act. I just got to look at how I'm doing on time. I'm doing fine. Okay. The Urban Farming Assessment Act is an opportunity for property tax reduction only in Salt Lake County and just recently in Davis County. This is a state law that allows Salt Lake County and Davis County to reduce a person's property taxes if they meet certain criteria. That they have to grow food crops only, and they have to have between 2 and 4.99 acres of farmable land, and they have to have this intent to sell. So you can't say, hey, my neighbor's got 2.5 acres over here. I can reduce his property tax, and I'm going to grow a bunch of food for my family. It won't work unless you are growing with the intent to sell that produce. You won't qualify. We're actually doing an open house about this program at the West Jordan Library on March 11th at 6:30, and we send out about 3,000 postcards to people that own between 2 and 4.99 acres of land in Salt Lake County to talk to them about how that can happen. There's a lot of details that I won't get into right now, but we're really excited to make that work and to get more people farming on small parcels. So now I'm going to skip back here. Okay, this is the new one. This is the one that I can't tell you any success story about because I have no idea how this is going to work. So I got to tell you, for years now I've been thinking, why don't we have like a Match.com for farmers? You know, like something that links up farmers with landowners, and that's what I mean by Match.com. Well, in case any of you guys watch TV, you know there actually is now a Match.com for farmers, where farmer people can meet farmer, single farmer people can meet to find a mate. So my idea of Match.com was about the land, not about relationships. Anyway, so come to find out that in about 25 states across the U.S. there is a farm link program. We don't have one in the state of Utah, so I thought, might as well try and see if this is something that'll work. And this really came out of our commercial farming. When we send out an RFP and ask people to bid on these parcels of land that they could lease, ever since then the word's got out that Julie's got land. And I mean, that was 2010. And so for the last 4 years, I get phone calls all the time from people saying, I understand you've got land, you can find some land for me. I'm looking for land. So here we go. We're going to try to do this in a way that will provide that landowner with a property tax reduction and also bring more local food into our area. So what we're going to do is, at this meeting on the 11th, is we're going to talk to them about the property tax reduction option. And literally, you might go from $6,000 to $95 or $100 in taxes, in property taxes per year. So there's a tremendous motivation for somebody to try this and to see if they can make this work. So we want to know how many acres they have, quality of soil, things about it, because we don't want them to go down this road if they don't actually qualify. So we'll be out there with the assessor too, making sure that they actually have a minimum of 2 acres and making sure they understand you can't put bees on it and grow a few herbs and think that you can get a property tax reduction. And then we've got farmers that, like I say, or people that want to be farmers that have been calling me for a long time. And they have an application as well. We'll have these on our website next week. And then we'll go through this process. And for now, we won't do it electronically. We're going to do it by that old-fashioned way of talking to people and linking people up. A lot of the states now have gone to an electronic database, but since we're starting out, I think I would prefer to do it in a way where we're doing it one-on-one with folks. So that landowner, he can farm that land himself, or he can hire somebody to farm it. And so we believe that that's going to be, we hope, a successful, I like to call them home runs, but they're home runs on a Little League field. So they're on the Salt Lake County, you know, our fishbowl is this big, it's not the state, so that's what we're working on. So if you want to contact us to find anything more about this, I should have put our website up here as well, but you can contact Sapreed or me. I have to tell you that along with the duties that you shared about what I do with open space and urban farming, my job has been expanded and I am doing a lot of other projects. So a lot of the urban farming things are being segued to Sapreed, and she does work for me, so we will participate in this stuff together. But Sapreed would probably be the best person to call, and our website is slco.org/urban farming. And I leave you with this: beehives, less of one and more of the other. So, anyway, Roz, you're up.
Guess we'll do all the questions again.
Yeah.
So you might notice I have a different name tag on. I came from a different conference that I was at in Lehigh this morning and was presenting there. And that was a much different conference. I was presenting to colleagues that work in Extension. So I work for Utah State University in Cooperative Extension. For those less familiar with what that is, it's extending university research out to the people, which I really love to do. It's a fun and rewarding job. And but before I talk too much, I actually want to know who I'm talking to because it is a much different audience this morning. So for those of you in here that garden, can you put your hands up for me? Okay. So yeah, about 2/3 of the room. That's great to see. And students interested in local food movement. Okay, so plenty of people in the room in that category. And I see Sean, you're at the back. So staff and faculty at universities sitting in the room. And environmental activists and very active people in the community up in Logan are here as well that I know. So great to see so many faces. Did I miss anyone out? Did anyone not have a chance to put their hand up? Yeah, what is it that you do?
Regulators.
Regulators, okay, perfect, great. That's a new direction we're actually heading with Farm Chef Fork, given changed regulation for GAP certification in the state. So I'm going to talk about Farm Chef Fork, and where I come from is a mixture of several of those categories. Obviously, I was a student at some point, passionate about the local food movement, and I was talking about this program to a permaculture instructor. Permaculture is a way to design landscapes that mimics ecological systems. And he said, okay, so what? Why are you doing this? And I was like, well, because the local food movement is important, farm security, etc. And he yawned and said, well, so what? And I was like, what do you mean, so what? That is the important part. He's like, no, there's a reason you're passionate about this. And so I had to backtrack and think about that. And I grew up in a rural community in Ontario, Canada. And where I grew up, the farmers in that area either grew corn, soy, or wheat, and or hay. And the way that they farmed, it was like a contract, and so they worked with a larger company, bought the seed from that company, bought the pesticides from that company, sold back to that company. And there was a large issue where I grew up with younger generations not wanting to farm. And I believed in that younger stage of my life that part of that was because the innovation, the creativity, and decision-making in the farming process was being taken out. And so I started to become more passionate about that topic, started researching, and also, just to backtrack one more time, I grew up in a small town, but I grew up in between Toronto, Niagara Falls, London, so these big urban areas that were slowly getting closer. And started to also look into if farmers were to have some means to not only be more creative, but sell directly to a restaurant because they have this unique product, that has been shown in research to enhance farm security, and so it was a win-win situation. And then I went down to Florida to do my PhD program in conservation easements, and ended up coming here and turning that dream into reality by offering Farm Chef Fork, which I'll explain what this program is. So the mission of Farm Chef Fork, let me start there. It's a statewide program offered through Utah State, but as a partnership, like Julie's mentioned, with Slow Food Utah and Utah Zone. They help with some of our programming as well. And the goal is to enhance community vitality and reduce food miles by connecting Utah producers and restaurants. And so we work mainly with specialty crop growers, and the USDA funds this program. And we've done trainings throughout the state, and I'll talk about some of those in a minute. Probably triple this back. So how did this start? Well, it began with the passion that I had through growing up in a rural community and also working on a farm. I used to work on a large-scale dairy farm and a broiler farm. And my family called me egg hunter because I'd have to go in and get all the eggs from laying hens and would get spurred by roosters and everything. But yeah, so my background's in agriculture. But then I went to the Diversified Agriculture Conference in 2012 and heard Ryan Lauder speak. And for those of you who are foodies in the room, Ryan Lauder runs the Copper Onion in Salt Lake. And he was talking about frustrations he experienced in working with farmers. And I met with him afterwards and said, is there any training that exists that you know of that connects farmers to chefs, that overcomes all these barriers we're talking about? And he said no, but he would love to see one. And so that started to get the wheels turning. And then as I was researching, I was relatively new to Utah at the time. I've lived here for 4 years. And saw that in the USDA Census of Agriculture in Utah, between 1982 and 2007, over 300,000 acres of land were developed, so paved over. And what that translates to put a better frame in your mind, is over 50 acres a day. And so I was looking at this as a potential option to enhance farm security, a program like this, and decrease that rate of development just from one angle. And as we looked into more of the research, there was a myriad of benefits that we had covered in direct marketing between farmers and chefs, but there was a communication gap between the two groups. And at the time, there was no concerted effort to date to link farmers to chefs in the state of Utah. And so we got a USDA grant, a Specialty Crops Block Grant, to launch this program. And it's a collaboration between myself and a couple other faculty on campus and those groups that I mentioned. And we offered trainings, and those launched in 2013 and 2014, so relatively new. And we've had guest speakers at these trainings that these all represent farms or restaurants. And what I found with chefs, they're really hard to nail down. So if you're ever working with chefs, the secret to get them to come to your event is have them serve on a panel or be a speaker at that event, and they'll come. But they will not come if you just say, hey, we're doing this mingle, and you've got to have them speak at the event, and then they'll be there, and they'll usually stay for the whole time, which is great. But that's how to rope them in. And so we offered 6 trainings, and those trainings all give you a sample of what we've talked about, but mainly we help farmers overcome the social media barriers that they experience. We do a search to look for their farms in the area, so I pretend I'm a chef and I'm looking online to see where the local farms are, and it's a big eye-opener for them to see how unsearchable they are online. And so we help them increase their online presence. And then with chefs, we work with them on ways to communicate with farmers and how to offer fair pricing and things like that. So we get some ag economics professors in to talk about those subjects. And so we did 6 trainings in 2013, 2014, and we just got a new grant to continue these trainings, which I'll talk about towards the end. So working with the university, we've been documenting the impact of these programs, and it's been great to see actually just the farmers increase sales to restaurants, and that's already been documented in the first 2 years. And then also we've been getting quotes from chefs about the program, and I'll just might not read the whole thing for time's sake, but I do want to read this quote from, this is Colton Solberg from Heirloom Restaurant Group. He owns Communal and some other restaurants down in the Lehigh area. And he said, the most critical hurdle to overcome in our efforts towards building a sustainable infrastructure between local producers, artisans, and chefs has, in my experience, been communication. As we at Heirloom Restaurant Group have labored to make those connections on our own, it's become apparent to our team that we need more help. Someone who has a vested interest in strengthening the fabric of our food community but isn't directly involved with the day-to-day operations of running a farm to restaurant. And so that was great to see. This was a direct need that chefs were voicing for this program. And he came to our event, he was a speaker, and he came and stayed the whole day and then ended up setting up meetings with farmers at that event. That was at Thanksgiving Point. And so we've also launched through Farm Chef Org 6 mingles, and those are mainly in the same model as Slow Food was doing in Salt Lake area. And so we've done 6 of those in the first round of funding, and they're basically farmers set up like a farmer's market, and then it's not open to the public, it's only open to chefs, and they walk through and mingle. And because there's so few, I mean, there's, especially in some of these small towns, we've done these in Hurricane, Utah, which you're probably wondering, some of you, where that is. It's down by Zion National Park. But what's great about that location is it's between Springdale and Cedar City, St. George, and then also you have the big buyer of Zion, and then also in Moab. And so chefs walk through, they talk one-on-one with these farmers, they learn about what's going on the farm, and vice versa. And we have some great quotes from farmers. Appenzell Farms is up in the Logan area. And they said, we were able to make connections and leads with Island Market, which is a local grocery store type convenience store in Logan that may lead to selling eggs to their store. Additionally, it was great to meet other producers and make additional connections for our network. And so those were offered in the first round. And here are some pictures just to give you a visual. I'm a very visual learner. So this was the hurricane training, and these are farmers and around the audience, and then some farmers and chefs were talking in the lower picture there. And here's some more photos. We did a farm tour. This was Utah Zone is on that farm tour, as well as down in Moab, or Castle Valley to be exact. And some farmers were on that. And so it was great for the farmers too, because some of the farmers had actually never met or hardly talked before. And then these are some chefs talking here and farmers. So this was a chef from Colorado, but his restaurant was only 2 hours away from Moab, just over 2 hours. And then Mesa Farms, if you've never been there, on your way down to Boulder, Utah, they make pesto and breads there on their farm, amazing, delicious product. And then Jerry Harris, he has recently moved out east, and there's a new farm manager, but that's from Castle Valley Farms. And farmers got a certificate for attending these trainings. Just checked one time as well. Okay. So what happens at the trainings? I mentioned briefly some of the things, but I just want to show you a glimpse of some of the things we showed farmers as ways to market their farm. This is from Castle Valley Farms, and that same Jerry Harris you saw in the pictures in this video. And we work on ways like this to help farmers tell their story. So if they're stuck in an elevator with a chef, how do they really get to the chef's heart, and that chef can remember that restaurant? So I'll share this one story.
Castle Valley Farms is located in the southeastern portion of Utah, just a few miles out of Moab. We were in the second year of a pretty significant drought, so we were very short on water. The Colorado River is considered an endangered waterway. I feel the reason is rather obvious. At this point, the water that goes into the Colorado River actually never makes it to the end. All of our vegetables are grown in the garden, and our greenhouses, we use drip irrigation. Studies have shown that drip irrigation uses half or less of the water that regular sprinkler or furrow irrigation uses. There's so many different ways to conserve water, but to me, one I like to focus on is the idea of each of us eating more fresh produce. I think we all know that that's more healthy lifestyle, but by eating more fresh local produce, we can really cut down the use of water.
That opportunity came to Castle Valley Farms from Whole Foods, and they produced that video. But there's great, there's such talent right now with the younger generation of students that are coming in to create videos like this that exists, and we connect farmers that are interested in doing so with students who can help them out. And so here's a video as well about a communal restaurant group, and I will warn you that this chef is extremely excited about local food, and his energy level is very high.
My name is Vance Lott. What's not to love about the Lake Farm? For one, it's local. It's right up the street from me. I mean, I've grown up in this entire region. I've been to the farm 10 times without even knowing it. It's just awesome. The produce tastes delicious. I can get it delivered every single day. It's super fresh. It's picked the same morning that I use it. It's really awesome to be able to tell your customers this was picked today. Not somewhere in Mexico, but it was picked today, 5 minutes north of here. It says it on the menu, my servers say it, I say it. When someone orders that salad or someone orders some beef, hey, that's local. That was brought in today. I bought that today. That was picked today. I like to support local. I like keeping the money in the community. I was born and raised here, so I want to make sure that people are taken care of here. So buying local keeps money local, and so I really like building relationships that last, and buying local, especially from Lene, does that. That's one reason I like it. Another reason it tastes so much better. You guys' beets are the most amazing beets I've ever had. They just taste like a real beet. They're awesome. The reason I like selling it is why they like eating it. It tastes better, looks better, smells better. The ingredients speak for themselves, so sometimes I don't even do anything to it. I don't have to cook it at all. I just leave it the way it is. Other times you just cook it simply with a little salt, pepper, and oil. It just tastes so much better. You do not have to do that too much to it. It's easy.
So this is a great video to actually show both farmers and chefs, because for farmers, this farm, Lene Farm, they created the video by interviewing this chef, but also the chef is so excited about sourcing from this farm that I think that excitement could really be contagious out to other chefs and show them the great advantages of sourcing locally. And other training topics, we talk about how to create an appealing website. Going back to Athensel, I use theirs as an example. They have a really nice interactive website, tell their story very well. How to use social media effectively, Facebook pages, and things like that. We go through a lot of social media training with growers, and also how to track who's using the website and where they get hung up on using your website. And Google Analytics is a great tool for providing website information. And then lastly, to go over the last thing with what we've been teaching, is that local food is a growing popular topic. And we share the National Restaurant Association Top 10 Trends, and you'll see local, environmental, healthy, gluten-free, hyper-local. So local is really on the scene in the national market trend for restaurants, and that's exciting to see, and sharing that with growers to show that their value or their product is valued, and it's just a matter of breaking down those barriers between the two. And so what's coming up now with the new funding we received, and I need to talk to Julie afterwards. When I first was here, I did actually a tour with Julie around Salt Lake and saw some of the great things she's been doing. And I think it's time now for us to touch base again with this new programming we're going to be offering. So we're tweaking the program a little to offer some public farm dinners. It's different now because Farm Chef 4 has only ever been targeted to farmers and chefs, and we're going to do one thing now that opens up to the general public, and that's experiencing food on the farm and drawing a chef to cook that food right there on the farm. So that'll be a fun experiment, and we'll be working with Slow Food as well on that. And doing a feasibility study for a food hub. This will be mainly in southern Utah. And so looking at a food hub feasibility for Moab area and connected with the greater Colorado area there, and then down towards St. George area and into Nevada. And so we're going to look and see whether or not this is a need, and there's funding available if there is a need for a food hub in any of those areas. And I know Supreet was looking into doing something similar in the Salt Lake area. And offering more trainings. GAP this year is transitioning to being required for growers, and so we're going to be doing the actual GAP training this year, which is good agricultural practices. It's a requirement now for them to get that certification. And then doing restaurant and farm tours as well, and those will be for farmers and chefs. Farmers and chefs, sorry. And so that was a quick fly-through of Farm Chef Fork and what we've been doing so far. And it's been exciting. We've done trainings and programs from Logan down to Hurricane, over to Moab, throughout the state, Salt Lake obviously as well. And that's my contact information there. I'm based out of USU Moab, but my programming is statewide. And so feel free to contact me if you have any questions. And I think we have 10 minutes for questions. For either Julie or I. Yeah.
Julie, I don't know if you remember, I don't
I
know,
remember you.
4 years ago or something, we did the first urban farming conference
Yes.
with the help of Jim Bradley and you.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, anyway, it was a great success.
Think about, we didn't even know what we were doing or what we were starting. That was just 2010.
Right.
And to see the growth and what's happening. And there's a lot of naysayers out there. It seems to be generational. I'll just leave it at that. And people with gray hair seem to think that I work with anyway that seem to think that this is a fad, and they're realizing that it's not.
Not all the gray hairs.
I know, not all the gray hairs think that way. Yeah.
Another question for you, Julie. What is the atmosphere in Salt Lake County and some of the cities within the county regarding right to farm statutes and things like that? Is it pretty easy to get to follow an application through the process and get that approved in the county, or is it met with some opposition?
Okay, so in Salt Lake County, we have 17 cities and I can't remember how many townships. So Salt Lake City's been very progressive. They're definitely the leader, not Salt Lake County, in ordinance. Salt Lake City has written into ordinance very supportive language for farming, for hoop houses, for low tunnels, things like that. Not so much other areas. There's a lot of cities in Salt Lake County that still feel like agriculture is a placeholder. It's a placeholder for other development. And so I try to spend time with mayors and city planners to get them to understand that it's an asset to their community. So it really depends upon the area.
That's cool, because I just did some research last semester regarding agricultural land loss within the region. And that atmosphere was definitely reflected in my research. That people do view it as a placeholder, and once it's no longer feasible or viable or usable, they pounce on it for development.
Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of the farmers can get really concerned as well. They think, you want to preserve my land, I want to sell my land, you know, and we have to explain to them the whole conservation easement idea, which is, you know, we're not here to force you to give us our land. You should be compensated for your land, whether you're selling it for a school, for a development, or to preserve it. You should be compensated for that. And so helping those farmers understand that there can be, that it would be good to have the option. And there are farmers, there are probably 4 or 5 that I know of in the valley that would love to put permanent, perpetual conservation easements on their property, but right now we don't have any money. There's no money to do that.
I was gonna ask that.
No.
Your farm to table events, are those in Southern Utah or?
No, I should explain that better. The upcoming trainings and opportunities like the farm dinners will be across the state. And we're gonna do some in some areas this first year, it'll be late fall, and then some in other areas next year. And the farm dinners will be a little earlier than late fall, but the trainings will be late fall. So we're gonna be doing at least one in the Logan area.
How do we find out about that?
We have a website through Farm Shack Fork, and I'll also, because I'll be working with Slow Food, they'll be posting these on their website as well, the events. Yeah, so either Google searching Utah Farm Shack Fork or Slow Food Utah.
Become a member of Slow Food Utah.
Yeah.
You'll know.
And so we also partner on Eat Local Week, I should have mentioned that as well. And so with that, this is great, these opportunities to come together because we can not overlap or reinvent the wheel, but work together to do some Eat Local Food Week events here in Salt Lake, or in Salt Lake. We're not in Salt Lake right now.
Well, such fun.
Thank you. Yeah, that's simple.
Does the county do any sort of collaboration with like private CSAs, and is there like a government program for community-supported agriculture systems?
Well, CSA Utah just held their annual open house last night at Wheeler Farm, and we arranged that space for them free of charge. Usually they'd be charged to utilize the facility. We promote it a lot for them, and we like to think we're a partner with CSA Utah. David Bell, who is probably for the longest time was the organic and CSA poster child for farmers in Utah, is on Salt Lake County land. He leases 10 acres from us. And so we're always looking for ways to support that local production and sale.
Is there any other questions?
I have one. So as students, especially at Utah State, we're starting to kind of get involved in projects with permaculture garden and victory garden. What kinds of tips would you have for us to kind of apply these same basic kind of principles through urban farming to kind of get our students involved in thriving in this kind of urban farming?
What I found successful in kicking off that permaculture garden on main campus is figuring out the resources available first before trying to really sell the garden to people, to students individually, instead of working with professors that are teaching classes and getting them involved, which will help the long-term stability of the program. So that launched with a workshop we did in the Logan area with 75 people, and the community was really excited and energized at that time to move forward. And then, as you know, working in a university system, it's like, okay, let's put a permaculture garden in to teach about water-wise landscaping, perennial edibles, and pollinator health. And then you get deadlocked in working in the bureaucracy of trying to get the approval for the site and the irrigation system and all those steps involved. And so it's been a long time. That original motivation with the community has slowed, but I think it could be reharnessed again with another workshop as you're implementing the garden. But going back to the classes, I was just mentioning to James here in the front row that we got approval from a teacher, a professor on campus teaching irrigation design. So her students are actually going to do the irrigation design for the garden. And then a graduate student who is interested in permaculture from landscape architecture and a professor who is interested in the same topic. They designed the plan for the garden, the planting plan and the way it looks. And then nutrition dietetic students will be harvesting from the garden and cooking it in their classroom. So showing this long-term stability of a garden is really important for the university. Because the first thing that administrators will tell you if you want to do more of these type of projects is student initiatives come and die. And so when you leave the university, how will this garden continue onwards? And they want to see things like that, that classes are involved in weeding the garden and harvesting from it and keeping the irrigation lines open, things like that.
And I would just add, I don't know how your cafeteria runs here and how much is sourced local, but that's a great question. And I saw, at least in the lunch, the Sodexo, the wait staff was wearing the Sodexo shirts, which means sometimes corporate food service providers can say things like, you know, you've got a 90-day growing window in Utah. You can't support local food in a cafeteria setting. You know, and they're easy to pat you on the head and tell you to go your way. But you need to be firm and you need to be consistent. You need to ask how long that contract is for. When does that contract expire? So that, you know, can you have a member of the student body who cares about local food sit on that committee? Can you write into the bid specs local, what would it, you know, that they should try to spec local, that they should use biodegradable, you know, plasticware or to-go products. But there are ways that you can bring that in. I know at Westminster, where I graduated, and I was on the 20-year program, so none of you guys do that. I just graduated a few years ago. So at Westminster, they had to work for a few years bugging the administration, and now they have a chef and a food service provider in their cafeteria that actually came to our meet and greet that we did last week, and we had 25 farmers and school district nutrition directors or cafeteria chefs or charter school food nutrition people come, and they were so excited to get to know the chefs or to get to know the farmers so they can connect. And so now they're finally getting to a point where they're going to be bringing in some local food into the cafeteria at that school. So I think it's important what's served to you. And you've got to do that through the bid process and through the vendor.
And I'd say no matter what institution you're working with, you can find people that are interested in this topic, that are passionate about it, and start to build that network of individuals. And so at first I thought I was me and this other professor in nutrition, dietetics, food sciences were crazy and fighting this whole system and just like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can handle all the pressure. And then when you frame it a different way though, and you talk to a professor and say, oh, we want to put this garden in, but we need to have a very water-wise irrigation system because the structure of the buildings, we can't just harvest rainwater, we have to use irrigation. And she's like, well, I teach an irrigation design class. And I was like, oh, do you want to have it be your class project? And that's how that thing started. I didn't even mention the word permaculture at the beginning, and then that network happened. And so the way you frame things is really important, and there are people that are interested in what you're doing, which is framing it the right way.
Yeah. And I would just say when your food vendors say you can't do it because there's a contract, Jordan School District has a contract. They have a contract that they have to work with a food service company I don't know what, it's a pretty big percentage of the time. However, what they've done is they've been able to source local some of the time. Doesn't mean every meal, everything's going to be sourced local. But if you can provide, peaches went during the peach harvest, you can bring pears in, you can do these food tasting experiences, you can bring products in on occasion. And so you need a vendor who understands that and is willing to do that. Sometimes they do. Sometimes it just takes a lot of nudging and needling and telling them you're not going to go away and you care about it and doing petitions and things like that they did at Westminster, but it worked.
Yeah.
I was going to say on that, when we heard our keynoter, David Orr, talk this morning, I venture to say that before him, not many people knew about Oberlin College at all. Maybe in Ohio, but not anyplace else. And it's not a big place, it's not a lot of population at all. But he was the one that started doing all of that, and so it just takes one to get going.
One last note relates to Julie's urban farming project. In Moab, we're doing an initiative called Bee Inspired Gardens, and they're essentially permaculture gardens. So they're teaching about water-wise gardening, pollinator-friendly, perennial edibles. And in doing this project, there has been so many individuals and companies come to me and say, do you want to do one on our property? And I'm at a deadlock of, I can't, I got to slow down and just manage the ones we're doing now, which is about 5 or 6. And then expand out from there. But there's so much opportunity if you want to do this thing on your own and start up this type of movement of growing your own food in an urban setting. There's a lot of land available.